So yes, I'm the founder and executive director of the Rwandan Canadian Healing Center. We are based here in Toronto. We've been in operation since 2018. And the organization that I now lead started actually out of my personal experience, my PTSD, trauma, and post-traumatic challenges that I faced. Obviously, having lived through the 1994 Rwandan genocide against the Tutsis, myself and many people who lived through those experiences eventually those things come back to hunters, and for me that experience happened around 2009 to 2012, where I lived through a lot of challenges including suicidal thoughts for many years, and of course I was able to overcome that. I did a walk from Toronto to Montreal holding a ricochet as a symbol of the challenges that I had carried in my life. The walk was in 2016, and from there came back connected with the Rwandan community in Toronto, and I was able to establish the organization. But also beyond that, have been able to do a lot of work around collective collaboration with other agencies, building capacity for not just our organization but also supporting other agencies in the African community. We've since I think 3 years ago we started doing work around refugees. So we're now doing transition housing. We're housing African refugees that have are looking to advance in society here in Canada. And of course, we have a community hub downtown here, Toronto, where we bring together different agencies to create a home, which is a part of our affordable housing initiative that we started in 2021, looking to develop what we call the African Canadian Affordable Housing Village. And that's where we are, and we're looking to develop those across the city and across the GTA and beyond.
From surviving genocide-related trauma to leading community-driven institutions is powerful. So how does healing-centered justice reshape how we design poverty reduction and social support systems?
Thank you. And I want to start by, and I'm glad you have a timer because I sometimes could go on forever. I want to start with this is the first time that I even and I sort of acknowledge that there is a World Justice Day, and being that one of my personal heroes is my father, who was a judge and lived through a true essence of what justice is. Because to me, I look to him in terms of we talked about the quote that you shared, uh, which it goes by. Justice is what love looks like in public, and I just thought about him again. So I just wanted to thank you for even giving me the moment to remember my father again, who passed away about 30 years ago today. So just it's always an honor for me to reflect and to remember him. But in terms of answering that question, I believe to me you can't develop if you are obviously under poverty. And for us, when we talk about really healing trauma, it's yes, healing traumas of war, healing traumas of the tragic experiences we've lived through, like the genocide against the Tutsis in 1994. But it's also healing trauma caused by poverty. One of the things we quickly realized when we started the organization, the Rwandan Canadian Healing Center, was that you can't heal somebody who is going through so much of the turmoils. And so the best way to reach them first is to give them the ability to thrive, or at least to be in a place of um, uh, having the ability to take in new information, to take in new understanding. And so I think it's always important to start with how do we get you from a place of obviously, having lack of resources to a place where you have some resources, you have a job, you have a future, you have a plan for how to move forward. Once you are there, then you can actually think about ways to move forward. So I say without that, you can't really move forward. And that's how we've approached even our work. The village approach for us, it means we're bringing everybody together and you're thinking from a historical, cultural grounding, and you have that grounding before you can move forward. So I think it's important to have that healing centered justice in order to look ahead, in order to design the future moving forward.
I have another question for Kizito, right? Kizito, so Ubuntu, Ubuntu emphasizes interdependence and shared humanity. Now, how can this philosophy, right, inform Canadian approaches to economic development, climate action, and community resilience, especially for racialized communities?
Thank you. It's obviously it's a big question because I think even just thinking of the word Ubuntu, and by the way, in my language, Kinyarwanda, Ubuntu is pronounced as Ubuntu, which is pretty much just getting things for free. So if I give you something, I say this is for you, and I'm giving to you for Ubuntu, Ubuntu. You're not paying for it. But it's a concept that is across the board in Africa to be known as I am because you are. You know, if I'm living good, I want to make sure you're living good as well. So it's obviously going to take a long time for us to instill this value into the Canadian society. But I think that is maybe our responsibility. I think about, for me, when I think about the Ubuntu, I think about the economic development, collective action. I think about climate. If we could put in the context of climate action, I think about the future. You know, how are we doing so we can leave a better world for the future generation? And even in our work, that's really the only thing that for me that drives me is how do we make sure that we're living a better world than the one we found? Of course, appreciating the work that the ancestors, you know, whether you're talking about in the Americas with the Blacks community, but also on the continent with all of our folks that fought for independence, what they've left us behind. How do we make sure that we leave something 10 times better than what we found that they passed to us? And then, of course, community resilience. But for me, I don't even think about community resiliency. I think about community. How do we get us to a thriving space? So I think there's a lot we can teach about we can teach the Canadian society, and I think it's important that we speak unapologetically about our values, and that's for us, especially with the group that we work with. As you know, Obi, I mentioned this. We are establishing a land trust called the Ubuntu Land Trust and Development, and that's what's going to implement all of our affordable housing in the villages work that we're going to be doing. And one central piece is the Ubuntu meaning how do we work collectively? How do we make sure that there is a reciprocal energy among how we work? And how do we pass those values to other Canadians as well? Because the idea is that if we build a village, everybody's going to be welcome. We want to welcome Canadians to come and learn how Africans meant to live. And sometimes we judge ourselves on how Africans are doing now. We forget about how Africans lived when we were thriving. And that's what we want to remind the Canadian society that we are not who we are who we have always been.
So you describe yourself as a storyteller committed to dignity and transformation. How can storytelling shift public narratives, influence policy, and mobilize action towards more just, climate resilient, and inclusive communities?
Uh, Thank you again. So I would say actually any of these elements, without a story, you can't move. Like whether you're looking at influencing policy, whether you're looking at shifting narrative, mobilization, it all begins with a story. So personally, my background is film. I went to film school. I was in the film industry for a while. I thought I would be telling stories, and then I'm here now. Don't ask me how that happened. But when we first went to film school, the first grounding or centering was the hero's journey, you know, understanding where you are in the ordinary world versus the spatial world. Ideally, you want to be in the spatial world to get ideas, to get, you know, to meet mentors, to really understand who you are. And all that comes from experience. It comes from knowing your legacy, your heritage. It comes from, accepting your challenges and really using those as your tool, putting those in your toolbox to kind of go to battle. Soldiers take guns and bullets. For us, it's our challenges. It's what we learn through our journeys. So for me, for example, the fact that I went through 3 years of depression, anxiety, suicide, all of that is what I use now. That is my calling card when I go out into the world. And if I don't tell that story, what's the point of even being here? I think it's always important to use your story to shift narratives, to influence policies. We've done that, for example, here in Toronto with the African Canadian Collective when we were advocating for refugees. If I tell you, we've moved mountains. We're just telling those stories of the refugees and the experience that they endured, both to make sure they had shelters, but also to make sure that the organizations that were supporting them got reimbursed for all of the, well, not all, but at least some of the resources they had to expense. So I think it's important. And it's also important in terms of telling the story on what the climate resilience or climate, how do we create a better future, make sure that our communities are thriving now and in the future. We have to embed it in the story. Once you have the story, you can move the mountains, I believe.